getting the approval to do so, and I think it's a testament to how much our folks believe in our kids primarily, and then also what we're trying to do. But I will tell you, and as I think I put in the Trumbull County Times, this is no way to run. You know, we're in these perpetual referendum cycles, and you constantly have to ask for more. You know, at some point we have to understand that something has to change, and it's going to be massive in terms of the amount of change. And I think it interrelates to a lot of different things. But you know, we're certainly appreciative. Again, the least fun thing we do is ask people for money. But again, we're certainly, I think, appreciative, like I said, proud of our community for doing its thing. But we know that the stress and strain that puts on some of our people is not positive as well. So we don't take it lightly. I think one person asked me once if congratulations were in order. I said, absolutely not. That's not what this is. This is the ability to continue to do what we need to do for our kids in a time where we're going to see changes like we've never seen.
It's coming quick. And, you know, I think part of you being here and the other people coming in on Fridays is that we're helping explain the referendum. Because every time people hear, oh, what's the school want more money for? And it's not like you're trying to go buy brand new you know, nice new desk for your office or something. It's keeping the kids educated.
Well, it's all aspects, exactly. And I think we have such a political game being played right now. And I've said it before, and I'm not the only one. You know, we talk about this. Education gets used as this political football nonstop. In that in and of itself should be cause for concern for everybody, regardless of what party they may align with or what belief system they have. The fact that we continue to leverage education for political wins and losses, like we have no idea right now going into next school year already what we have. You know, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to address an issue of whether or not funding should be in place for the next 400 years, right? Well, that's all a political game. Every side of it. Depending on which side you're on, then you are offended one way or the other.
Of course.
You know, but the fact that we're going into, now we're in April towards almost to May, we have no concept of what we have for budget numbers yet. So you couple that with then how do we try to project out referendums and those types of things. You know, I think, and our folks have understood that. They've been aware. I think, you know, when you talk about literally every school inside the co-op, vast majority of schools in Trumbull County, 200 throughout the state, needing operating referendums to survive, something's wrong.
And like you said, it's of all the things that should not be political is our kids' education.
Right. And I think, you know, part of that is it's hard to fund something if you have questions about whether it works and whether or not we need to move forward. And we've talked about this at length, and I think it's important to get into it again. I think the amount of change we have to go through very, very quickly is going to make people really uncomfortable. You know, there's no question we have to leverage the technology. We have now the opportunities to do things better for kids, things we've been chasing for the better part of 30 years. We now have the capacity to do. You know, we've talked to death about the personalized learning and all that stuff that's coming. And I think that's part of it is if your leaders, they're looking at this saying, we need to change. We're not going to keep funding the same system, except they don't have, in many cases, the intestinal fortitude, the guts to bring that up. So they force us, all the local people, to really get into the hard conversations because they're worried about getting reelected. I think that's the sad part.
That is.
They are the folks we have chosen to lead. And they don't want to seem to do that. They do everything backhanded, right? You want to see changes in school districts. Okay, well then talk about that. Talk about the need based on the values and necessity of the future. Don't starve us to death to force us to do it because you can stay popular and we're unpopular. I think that's the big challenge right now is continuing to be able to share that. And again, our folks in this region have I think become more and more aware. So I think it's what, again, part of the reason why I'm proud to be here and why it's a great opportunity.
Exactly. And, you know, we talked about that need to move forward and fast tracking, and AI has been the thing that everyone's talking about. So, and we can't sit on it. We can't wait for it to, you know, like, see what happens elsewhere. You need to go with it. Because I found it it's a very good tool. And in 1 year's time, from what it was a year ago to what it is now, the things I can do with it blows my mind, and it's going to keep moving that way. And like you said, we need to get these kids fast-tracked into this because it's already here. We're probably already behind.
We are, and I think, that's part of the challenge is preparing kids for a world we can't see.
Yeah.
Right? And one that's going to be so dramatically different, although full of opportunities, tremendous opportunities. World Economic Forum, I just saw information the other day, by 2030, so 5 years, 173 million jobs will be impacted by this, including 90-plus million will be just simply lost.
Yep.
Now, that's still a net gain of 70-plus million jobs, right? But the way that those things are going to change, a group of us from CISA 4 and Corey Kulig from Aliva Strum, myself, had an opportunity with some tremendous help from the Ron and Joyce Wanek Foundation to attend the Global AI Summit out in San Diego last week, actually Friday through Wednesday of last week. And, the opportunities to learn and see things, 140 countries represented at this thing.
Wow.
Okay. I think the positive, the really, really, really significant positive thing is the same vision that we identified about 2 years ago of personalized learning, leveraging the technology is the very system that everybody is chasing. So in that respects, our schools in this area are ahead just a little bit, but it doesn't make it any less difficult to create that degree of change. And then, again, just the pace. We listened to the chief financial officer from OpenAI, so ChatGPT, and referenced multiple times how if you're planning out more than 90 days right now, it's not necessarily accurate.
Yep.
You need to have a vision, a thought process going forward. But if your specific and strategic plans are out more than 90 days, you're probably going to be wrong. I think that's hard for folks who have grown up in a linear world where we've been able to plan, and I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah.
Your inputs would equate to your outputs. You could plan something, you could control the entire piece of it. We've had talks as late as this week at school about platforms, right? This whole movement is not about a platform. It's not about picking a curriculum. It's not about anything like that. It's about what do our kids need, and then being nimble enough to be able to change. But the again, 140 countries at this thing, all chasing the same vision that we were fortunate enough to get into, again, with the things that we've been exposed to by the folks at Ashley, by the Wanek family, the foundation. Jim and Karen Dada have been phenomenal in that respect. I think that piece of doesn't make it any more easy, though. I will tell you, it is not easy work right now trying to explain something that doesn't exist to folks who want to protect the past primarily because it was positive for us.
Yeah.
It was a good place, right? We grew up, we've had success, and now literally that model is gone overnight. It's gone. But, I think, again, the opportunities to engage in how this stuff is blowing up, you just said it, overnight.
Yeah.
Things that didn't exist a month ago or capacities that didn't exist 2 days ago, all of a sudden flip on. And if we aren't nimble enough as school systems to prepare our kids for that, and I'm not talking about us doing it for school.
Yeah.
This is about preparing our kids, nothing less. Yep. So I think that's the good stuff.
Yep. Well, yeah, I even know just in my governmental business with being on district rep over in Jackson County with some of these laws and stuff, we get, a week before we got to go into our meetings, they give us, we got this many things on the agenda, and sometimes you got a law that you have to go through and using ChatGPT, or I'll even throw it in Grok or the Facebook one too, and just compare, so to understand some of this stuff. And sometimes you can find things that would take you hours of scouring in 30 seconds. It'll pop up and say, this is what it's about. You get your, so I think we need to move more towards that, not be afraid of those type of things too.
Right. And get back to thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And understanding that we need dramatically different capacities for our kids and the ability to think and wade through information and validate information and synthesize. But you're right. The power of the technology even today, the ability to save time, if you're willing to embrace it. At the same time, we need to do a much better job very, very quickly about doing things like preparing kids with AI literacy. We need to understand the safeguards. We need to understand how this stuff works, how you can be manipulated if you're not careful, and I think that's all part of what we're trying to pull off, and quite frankly, we are pulling it off. It will be in place, certainly massive chunks of it for the fall.
Yeah.
I think, will it be perfect? No. And as you've seen with the tools you talked about already, this is the worst they will ever be.
Yeah. They
will get better literally every day. In the billions and billions and billions of dollars that are being dumped into this process right now. It's, again, is it challenging? Yes. Is it scary? Absolutely, especially for people my age and older.
Yep.
You look at this and you think the world is chaotic, and, well, it is.
Yeah.
We can't pretend it's not. We can't bury our heads in the sand, right?
Yep.
We have to understand that, and we have to embrace it if we're going to lead our way out of this, or it will be done to us.
Exactly. Well, and I think a lot of people like my age and your age, we grew up with, Hal, open the pod bay doors, the AI that we see, but a lot of people don't understand a lot of what AI is just information that is put in that we're retrieving from. It's just a fast compute so it can go through all the information. It's not really a sentient being like a lot of people would think. So.
No, and yet it has the capacity to. If we're not aware of that, and that's part of what we heard out in San Diego was, we're not far away from AI being able to teach itself.
Okay.
To learn by itself. And I think that's something, again, we need to be very aware of. We can't panic because it's here.
Yep.
We are not going to stop this.
Yeah.
If people leave here with nothing else today, we are not going to stop this. And it is irresponsible, in my opinion, to ignore that. So we have to jump in and we have to figure it out and prepare our kids to be able to navigate the responsibility of that world. At the same time, they're looking at opportunities to solve problems that have plagued us for years.
Yeah.
Now, but you're right. What is AI? It's high horsepower computing.
Yep.
Okay. Also going to have some significant impacts on our power grid.
Oh, yeah.
You start talking about the jockeying to have capacity to generate this degree of computing power. That's significant, right? You start tossing around terms like quantum computing.
Yep.
If folks really want to learn that, do a little bit of digging in that. Look at the horsepower. How much information can be synthesized at the snap of a finger?
Yep, and the cooling systems that are involved in all that. And
all the interrelated
crazy
pieces of that are all part of this, and the impacts of food and the ability to solve medical things that have eluded us forever. We've been limited by what we can process in the human brain and the pace at which it can be processed.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, those things are in exponential growth modes.
Yep. Speaking of the medical, I can't remember. I was listening. It was a podcast once, but there was a doctor who has implemented this into their healthcare thing where they have an AI chat bot that you can go in with, okay, here's all my records, here's my symptoms and stuff, and it can it'll go through it and it'll give the doctor an idea. These are your possibilities, which they said it's made it a lot easier to diagnose people right away instead of, with some people with chronic illnesses, it takes 5, 10, 20 years, and they're able to diagnose them, get them the help before it gets to the bad.
Much greater accuracy,
yes.
Right? The ability to synthesize volumes of information quickly. But I think you hit on a key piece of this, and education is the same. It still goes to the doctor at this point. Right?
Yes.
Just like education is still about the educators. We still need to engage and interact with people and those types of things. And I think if we leverage all of that stuff, we showed our staff a video of a hospital in China where the entire medication distribution is automated.
Really?
Nobody touches it.
Yep.
And they've seen greater accuracy than they've ever seen in terms of no issues with medication errors.
Okay.
Right? No human error involved. Runs 24/7. Okay. You still have to have some oversight. Somebody's still got to decide, right? And verify and all those things. But if nothing else, those things are happening in the world.
Yeah.
And if we in this country don't wake up and understand that these things are here.
Yeah.
And as much as we want to prevent that, and as much as I can only imagine myself in 10 more years, I'll be that crotchety old man that says, I don't want that, It's here.
Yeah.
And we have to embrace it. We have to understand it. We have to learn, or we have to trust those who will do it.
Yes.
That concept has never changed, right?
Yep.
You talked about government.
Yep.
Who really understands the full breadth of what takes place at a federal government, a state government?
Yep.
You have to trust the people. And that kind of goes back to my frustration with school funding, right? These folks we expect to lead, and they're playing politics with our kids' lives.
Oh, yeah.
That's unacceptable.
Yep.
And I think the quicker we get into that, but our version or our responsibility is also to prepare a vision of education that can be supported. And folks forget about that too. We take it all politics, right? Blame the legislators. Well, they're trying to do things as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not blaming them. I'm telling people this is how it works. So I think we have a vision. The quicker we can start sharing that, we're getting close enough now to be able to share it.
Yep.
And I think that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a crazy world in 10 years. I don't think we're going to recognize it, or, as fast as technology is catching up, I think we're going to be living, we're already living in the future with our phones and everything, but I think it's going to be pretty amazing.
It's going to be a crazy world in 2027, Brian.
Oh, yeah,
we're not talking we're not talking 10 years.
Yeah.
By the fall of 26 even, this is going to be, it will not look like it does now. I really do believe that. I mean, look at all of the aspects of life that are changing. So I think that's all part of it. We just have the responsibility, or we have accepted the responsibility.
Yeah.
I think Jenny Riggle, one of our CISA folks, and Brittany Walls, they talk about these things all the time about how we need to build an army of change, right? And how the army is starting to build. And that's not a negative. We need folks to wake up. We need folks to ask questions, but not from a constant default. Just the other night at parent-teacher conferences, one of our parents came up and said, "Can we get rid of this AI learning?" I said, "It's not going to happen."
No.
And it wasn't necessarily, it was serious, but it wasn't an antagonistic scenario, right? But kids are trying to navigate this as well. And I think how we message it as adults is important. Okay, we can try to protect them and prevent this, but I think the more we talk about the need to engage and really put kids in charge of being able to learn, I just said 170 million jobs impacted by 2030.
Yes.
It's 2025.
Yeah, it's just right around the corner.
And some of them are taking place today.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a lot of information to take in, and
it really is. And I'm proud of our group that we have put together to be able to really lead through this. I think the things that we are doing are challenging. And if nothing else, if we operate from a perspective of the current system no longer works.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not one of these, and we talked about this before, I'm not one of these schools broken. Okay, the world changed. And we need to change quickly to navigate it. We got great results for a long time. And many of our folks that are making decisions and paying bills right now grew up in a world, and especially an educational world, that's not going to look anything like it.
Yeah.
They need to ask questions. We need to be able to answer them, but the current system no longer works for our kids. So we have to change it.
So on to the next thing.
Right.
Well, anything else you want to cover before we go today?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate the opportunity as usual. So
thank you so much for coming in. I always I learn something new every day I talk to you. So it's always a good time talking with you. I
appreciate it. Thanks.
We're going to get back into the music right after this short break.
Delivering the best for 50 years at International Ingredients.